Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
Do you want more new patients? How many more a month would you want? Are you doing any marketing to get them? If you're like most doctors, you probably are. But there's something going on in your office, and I say that with confidence because I've now seen it play out time and time again. Unless you are part of a very small group of offices, there's something going on in your practice that is probably preventing you from getting at least 50% more new patients than you could be getting. And that's what we're going to talk about on this week's episode of Dental Business RX. Specifically, we're going to discuss rethinking the dental receptionist position. So this is kind of a first for us. We're going to have some guests this week. I have a special guest, Jeff Santone. He's our new client services executive. And another guest, Sabri Blumberg, who's our deputy chief operating officer here. We're going to be discussing what exactly, as I mentioned, this is a real problem. And it's sort of an insidious problem going on in dentistry that you may not even be aware of in your practice. What is the actual problem? To what extent does it go with the receptionist position in dental practices across the United States? And what should you be doing about it, again, now, today, to start improving it in your office? So let's first look at this reception position. Normally, who is the receptionist in a dental practice? Normally, it's the newest employee because it's an entry-level position. It tends to have more turnover than, a hygienist or a dental assistant, a financial coordinator, etc. It's usually the new person. You put them on answering the phones. That's usually where they gravitate towards, right? Oh, they're new. I can at least teach them to answer the phones. But I want you to keep something in mind. They are the first point of contact in your practice. This is the first impression someone is going to get of your office. And if you're like most practices, the receptionist also schedules patients. So they're the person who's, you may have someone else who maybe schedules existing patients, but at least they're fielding those calls when they come in for the first time. One thing that we found over the years, obviously, most dentists want to get more new patients. That's sort of a no-brainer, right? Well, how bad can this get? Let's take this idea that we have the receptionist, that is the first point of contact, and they're usually the newest employee, and you have dentists really want to get new patients, and they're marketing to get them. Well, there's a marketing company out in Southern California, good friends of ours, called Viva Concepts. Viva did a humongous study on new patient conversion. They listened to 10,000 phone calls, recorded calls of new patient prospects calling in to schedule an appointment. These weren't mystery calls where someone was calling the office as a fake new patient. These were actual new patient calls. Okay, so listen to these 10,000 calls. And that took fortitude in and of itself. I mean, keep that in mind. That's a long time. What percentage of those 10,000 calls, in other words, how many of those 10,000 people who called in for various reasons, they might have been shoppers, they might have been people asking, do you take my plan? They might have just moved to the area, etc. What percentage of those folks do you think actually scheduled an appointment? Let you think about this one for a second. Tapping my fingers on the desk. There you go. All right, time's up. 23%. Out of those 10,000 calls, it was actually 2,260 or something along those lines actually scheduled an appointment. It's a little below 23%. So now transpose this to your office. If you get 100 new patient phone calls and you are the average dentist in the United States of America, only out of those 100 phone calls, 22 to 23 patients are scheduling. So you're spending all this money on marketing. And whether you're spending money on it or not, or a lot of money or not, you're doing something to generate these incoming calls. Maybe you're doing SEO, maybe you're doing PPC, maybe you're doing postcards, whatever you're doing. And if you're the average office, more than 7 out of 10 of those people calling in are not scheduling. So now if you look at these two factors, we take the newest, greenest employee, and this is new patients are so important to our practice, and we marry these two things together, it really doesn't work all that well. And so, I've known this statistic for quite some time. Here at MGE, we're a practice management education and coaching company. So we've been aware of this. We've done things with it over the years, but recently we decided to do mystery calls. You know this concept where one of our employees calls your practice as a new patient to sort of rate your receptionist. So we advertised the idea of a mystery call to just the dental profession. This was sort of a new client acquisition thing for us. To talk to prospective clients. That might have problems that they want to solve. And so we have, our software, HubSpot, records the call if you're in a one-party consent state, if only one person has to consent to get recorded. And if you're in a two-party consent state, we have a specific form that we fill out, which tells us what happened on the call. And then normally we would then call the doctor and discuss our findings. Well, and this is why I want to bring Jeff Santone on, our new client services executive. What we found making these calls was so bad. You just have to hear it. So Jeff's getting set up now. We're getting him set up here. So Jeff, are you on?
Yeah. I'm
okay,
here.
Good. So Jeff is here. So Jeff, I was just telling everybody how bad could it get? So now folks, just don't get too depressed about this. We're going to talk how bad it is. And then we're going to bring Sabri on at the end of this, who's going to tell you what to do about it. Just remember that. Okay. So first off, can I ask you some questions, Jeff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Please,
so how many calls did you guys make exactly?
We made about 454 calls.
Okay, so 454 mystery calls. And can you tell everybody sort of set up what the circumstances were? Like, how did you introduce yourselves? What did you say?
We called like we would a patient, where most patients call and they don't say much. They just ask a question. So we were starting with price shopping, where how much is it for a crown? Mm-hmm. And we just start off with a question.
Okay.
We were polite. We were professional. We wanted to be scheduled. Mm-hmm. Nobody was rude or aggressive. And I just want a price of a crown. It was just more of an inquisitive thing.
Mm-hmm. And what happened? What was the word you used? You gave me a word when I asked you. It wasn't horrible. It was
disgusting.
Disgusting.
Disgusting. Yeah. I didn't expect. I actually.
Sorry, Jeff.
Okay.
And I hate when interviewers cut people up, but I just have to say this. So I saw Jeff, and he just looked so downtrodden after making some of these calls. I'm like, how's it going? Yeah, I'm just disgusted. Those were his words.
It is. It's a bit because I haven't been. I mean, as a former practice owner.
Yeah.
And being on the receiving end of those phone calls, the new patient phone call was the most important thing in the world in the bubble, right? And so being here at MGE for the past few years, making phone calls as a vendor, I expected to be treated as a vendor that I used to treat vendors called. Like, you're never going to talk to a doctor. So
okay, so like if you're calling in from MGE, you have to. It takes a little bit. It's a little bit tougher to get to the receptionist, and that's understood.
And I understood that, and I thought, the receptionists were rude, they were short, they were curt, they were not really interested in talking to me because, I'm a vendor.
Sure.
That didn't change when I was a new patient. So I thought they would be more interested in helping me, like get an appointment. And I think it's the nature of the shopper phone call. There's a little bit of no time to talk to you. I ain't got time for this, mentality, I thought. But I was trying to be inquisitive. And so, we did over 400 of these phone calls. And, throughout our whole team, we did over 400. Between the four of us making phone calls, only 7 of those phone calls were done to the point where if we were to make an appointment, which we would never do, we would never schedule on somebody's book, right?
Because people ask about that. I had that question, when we were doing it, how did we do this? So let's say we got to the point where you've got this really sharp receptionist and they're going to appoint you.
Yeah.
How did you handle that?
I was like, wow, I gave him a really good, this is awesome. I really like what I'm hearing. I definitely want to schedule. I just need to check with work.
Got it.
And I'd give myself that out.
So that this way you didn't end up on the doc's book.
Yeah, because I'd feel
kind of
awful.
crappy.
Yeah, it'd be really awful. So we did that many phone calls and only 7 where it was like, I felt like, man, I would definitely come to this office.
Wait, so you mind if I clarify that?
Yeah.
Okay, so how many calls did we do exactly? You said it in the beginning.
454.
Okay, so 454.
Mm-hmm.
7 offices. You called as a shopper, so you weren't, hey, I'm new to the area.
Right.
So a little tougher.
It is a little tougher.
So out of 454 calls, 7 offices actually scheduled you.
Yes.
What percentage is that?
It's like 2%. Less than 2%.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
It's Many of them were pleasant. I don't want to say they were unpleasant. 80%, I would say, of the people you talk to are pleasant. They're just pleasantly not scheduling you. And so it was tough to try to explain that to a lot of the doctors, if they even listened to the call. Most doctors didn't even want to hear the call, which was interesting in and of itself.
What do you mean they didn't want to hear it?
They didn't want to schedule time to listen to the call. No, I'm not interested in listening to the call. And it's just, you're like, oh my goodness, and it's
sorry, I'm not trying to make fun.
I know.
It's just like, would you like to look at your x-rays? No,
I don't want to look at it. Don't want to know, Yeah. And the guys who did listen, there were many of them who said, wow, she was really nice. And I said, yeah, she was pleasantly not scheduling me. And they couldn't quite make that distinction. And, I understand that. You do want somebody pleasant at the front desk, but, that pleasantness can become robotic. And what I found is that, probably what we found is about 9 out of 10 of the phone calls, there was they just didn't care. There was no interest in why am I asking about the price of a crown? We got to the point where we were like, maybe it's the price shopper. And a couple of the guys that were doing these mystery calls, we changed it, and myself changed it to, I'm price shopping because I'm in discomfort.
Okay, so not like you're in emergency and pain,
right.
but it's like sensitive.
There's some discomfort,
okay.
And the fastest I could get in with discomfort is 4 days.
Wow.
The furthest out was 2 months. So it was like, well, I'm in discomfort. Well, I have something 2 months from now. And I'm just like,
oh, cool.
Wow. Okay.
Yay.
Great. You don't have anything sooner. So it was that non-interest of like.
Now, can I stop you there? I'm sorry. And I have to bite my tongue because I want to make sure like people want to hear you because you're the one who did this, right? But think with that for a second. Like it's still what you just said is blowing my mind. So I am the receptionist at a dental practice. My job is to get people in and help expand this business. And I'm pushing off a new patient who's in discomfort for 2 months. Like it's guaranteed they're going to call somebody else.
Yes. Without a doubt.
Absolutely.
Even if I would have scheduled that appointment, I would have hung up the phone and called the next office.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, let me hold on to this for 2 months just in case. I mean, I don't think the 4 day, I may have scheduled the 4 day, right? But I was definitely hanging up and I was calling the next office.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was bad. It was shockingly awful. And and I'm so dismayed and disgusted because like I shouldn't
be laughing so much. It's yeah. Okay.
I sat there in shock a bit because, like I said, being on the practice end of it, I was so dismayed by like these guys these doctors are having problems financially. They're having problems with dealing with insurance, and these are $10,000 cases that are not being scheduled. They're just not coming in. There's no interest. There's no follow up. And the doctors I did talk to that were willing to listen to the phone call, I said, "Now, by the way, did you hear about this phone call? Was it made known to you that a patient was calling in with 4 crowns that they need to get done? That they were looking for?" No, these guys had call tracking services. They had number tracking.
Did you ask if they listened to any of their own calls?
I did. They don't.
Yeah, it's interesting because Jeff delivers most of our new patient workshop, which is where we do all of our marketing training. Dynamite service, by the way, little plug here. Yeah. And if you want to find out more, go to newpatients.net. But anyway, so do you guys bring up the whole call tracking and new patient?
Yeah.
And do you ever survey to find out how often people listen?
I never surveyed, but of the guys that I called and talked to who had call tracking.
Yeah.
They were like, when was that phone call? And I was like, I gave them date and time because I was like, you could go back to your call tracking, meaning they're not listening to their phone calls.
Right.
And I think part of that is some may be that it's all lumped into every call that comes in, like services like Weave, I think,
sure.
versus a call tracking number that's at a dashboard.
Right.
But I was not shocked to find out that they're not listening to those calls on a regular basis.
I think that's pretty routine because I've with newer clients, because obviously we expect our clients to be really into it, but I've seen it when I'm giving one of the sales seminars and you ask people, raise your hand, who has call tracking? And everybody raised their hand. How many people listen? Like one hand goes up. I'm like, what? Come on, guys.
I wish they would listen because there was a few times I called to give a report. And the doctor said, well, you were just super rude to our staff. And I was like, I was rude. That's what she said. She said you were rude. You're pestering the office. I was like, that's a time where you wish you did have call tracking, because if they're saying that about how a patient called in and that's why this didn't go well, I'm wondering like how many other times has that occurred?
Did you ever have somebody say that when you had the call recorded?
No.
Oh,
never. Yeah. I wish I had it with the call listen, because the doctor can listen to that call and I can ask them, was I being rude, pushy, unprofessional? And they all would say, no, right. That's a great patient. We should have gotten them in.
Right.
And it's really easy with those mystery calls because I make them establish what are the piece of information you want to get. We get agreement before we even listen to the call. So that way they can grade it based off of what they said, not what I said. So.
Right. And you brought some more numbers. So can you break those down for us? You already went over a couple of them, but I just want to hear the whole breakdown.
Yeah. So we talked about there was only 7 that were done, like where I would schedule. We said that, there was actually 20% of the phone calls, like 91 of them that we would estimate from that 20%. They're just unpleasant. They shouldn't be picking up the phone.
Like they weren't nice.
They weren't nice.
Okay.
Where it was clear we were bothering them. And
can I ask, sorry to interrupt, but did you have, did you notice they became unpleasant? Obviously, it was 91 people who did this out of 454 calls. But did you notice they got unpleasant when you brought up that you were a shopper or when they answered the phone?
They answered the phone, and once I asked for the price of a crown, you can't get a lot out of like hello, but you can find out a lot by how someone answers the phone. Like the offices that would say their name, the office name, and the staff member name tended to be on the pleasant side. Really? Yeah, where we would get guys that would say just doctor's office and wouldn't give their name, which I always think is weird whenever someone picks up a phone. They might be somewhat pleasant, but the minute I would ask, well, how much is it? It was like there was attitude in it.
I see.
Yeah, and a lot of times the way we found that they would buy time is by trying to confuse me as a patient. Like they didn't know what to do to answer that question, meaning that, well, how much is a crown? Well, it depends.
Okay.
On the type of crown.
Sure.
And I would just, as a mystery caller, I would latch on to that because most patients like, what do you mean by type of crown?
Right.
Like, why would I know there's types of crown?
Right. This is zirconium crown?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I took them down that rabbit hole and I allowed them to never gain control of the conversation just because I kept asking the questions that were confusing me.
Right.
Well, what's a buildup? Well, they never mentioned a buildup. Like, I better call my other office.
Right.
And so I would do that, but it definitely changed their tone. Like their attitude towards me changed when they heard that I was interested in a price. And some of them would just give me a price and get off, like try to get off. Well, it's $12.25. Okay, thank you. And not ask me any questions. But some, if they wouldn't give me a price and I would push them, well, how about just arrange? I don't want to waste your time.
Sure.
They would do that and just try to get me off. It got bad on a couple of them. I was referred out to another office.
How many times were you guys referred out when you called?
I was only referred to another office. Well, I was referred out twice. Once I was referred out to another office down the road.
Okay.
Right, literally down the road. Because I thought maybe, I had to clear it up. I was like, just because they do orthodontics? And they said, no, they do all of it. Just like we do. And I was like, so they're the office I should call.
Here.
Right, yeah. So they're the office I should call, right?
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good.
And then I also got one time I got referred to the board of dentistry.
What?
Yeah, because
the dental board?
The dental board, yeah. Well, maybe you should call the dental board and find somebody who's just, who just does it based off of insurance numbers and who's the cheapest. We're not. And I was like, what? I didn't understand that, but okay, fine.
Wow.
I got hung up on once.
Okay. How many? Now you have the totals there, though.
Yeah.
You had 454.
Yep.
So how many times were you guys referred out?
Only 3 times.
How many times were you guys hung up on?
Hung up on only twice.
Just out of all the 454, twice.
Yeah. No one was super rude. But one of the guys that works for us, he said he was put on hold at least 5 times for more than 5 minutes, and he just hung up.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where you said it's there's not the allocation dedicated to the reception. Like that guy should be in a bubble. He should not be handling another phone call. He should not be handling somebody who's walking up to the front. Right. So it was, like I said, it's shocking and it continues to be shocking. You would think that, you'd have this priority for that front desk position. And it's part of the staffing issue, and the doctor issue for sure isn't making it clear that you should just bring somebody in for free.
Right. Well, that's interesting. So you mean like for a free look and see or whatever? Yeah. The interesting thing to me about this, you got the 23% number from Viva.
Mm-hmm.
You came up with 2 as a shopper, and then you're finding that 20% of the people, when they picked up the phone, the second they found out you were a shopper, became like a little off kilter.
Yeah.
Right. But this is, if someone's really desperately trying to get new patients to fill their practice up, and salvage the scene and collect more and produce more, it's like pouring something into a leaky bucket.
Yeah.
But it's 80% leaking out.
Just so you know, when we got a price, I always responded with, wow, that's much cheaper than what the other office quoted.
Okay.
And then I'd pause. I'd stop.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know that wow, yeah, we do great work here. Not like come in right now. Yeah, well, that's awesome. You should come in, It's just funny. It's so maddening. But it's a training issue. That's a top-down issue. It's an ownership issue that's not making it clear the rules and guidelines. No staff member is going to take it upon themselves to offer a free consult and x-ray for fear of retribution of one of those patients coming in who's not a great patient, and the doctor goes, well, why'd you give it to him for free?
Right. It has to be something that's set up in the office. And this is why we're going to bring Sabri on. But Jeff, thank you so much. Sobering is the best word I can think of. I hope for you folks out there listening. I mean, I know many of you listening, and I say this with the utmost of affection. You're probably not listening to your calls, which I know Sabri's going to get on you about when I bring her on. But it was sobering. But at least it opens the door to doing something about it, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Good.
And so there's something to handle there, and easy to get new patients up if you just handle the phones.
I love it. Okay, good, Jeff. Thank you so much. Okay, for those of you at home, we're bringing Sabri on next. Again, Jeff, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
And we're going to get into, now that we know we have a situation, what do we do about this? So we'll get into that in a minute. All right, so we're going to bring Sabri in here real quick, and I'll introduce her. But before I do, I should mention, we meant to mention it when Jeff was on. If you'd like to get a mystery call for your practice, we put the link in our podcast description here. So to get the mystery call, it's at MGE Online, and we have the link right there. If you have trouble finding it or trouble using it, just go to mgeonline.com, send us an inquiry, or you can call us at 800-640-1140 and ask for a mystery call, and we'll get it set up for you. All right. So that brings me to bringing on Sabri Blumberg. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about Sabri. Obviously, you notice we share the same last name. Sabri and I have been married for quite some time. Sabri is our Deputy Chief Operating Officer. She also is our Senior Technical Supervisor at MGE, meaning she is in charge of all of our delivery. I know this is kind of a little bit of a trite saying, but she's forgot more about running a dental practice than most people will ever know. I know. Have I set you up there well enough, babe?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I better perform now.
Good. All right. So I know you have a few points you want to go over on this, and kind of been building up the anticipation as far as, we want to go over what can these folks do right now to start improving this scene in their practice?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing I want to mention is that this is not a new problem.
Okay.
Right? This has been the conversion rate in dentistry, the new patient conversion rate in dentistry has traditionally been bad. Right? It's just more and more people are starting to track it and really notice it. And I think in today's day, when people are really very focused on getting more new patients, they're seeing that it's difficult to get to new patients if you don't convert them properly.
Yeah.
So anyway, what do we do about it? Well, you already went over the fact that you need to make sure that you have the right person on reception.
Right. The idea they're bringing in entry-level people, which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with bringing in entry-level people. That's great, but don't make them answer your phones.
Well, and here's the thing. It's actually all right to bring in an entry-level person as long as you have spent the time training that person before you put them on your reception or have them handle those phone calls. Right? Usually, reception is the position in a dental practice where we put to somebody to see if they're going to make it, right, in that dental practice. Well, you definitely don't want to put somebody on reception and then find out when your stats crash that they're probably not the right person for your business, right? So just like with any position in dentistry, reception being one of them, you want to make sure that you train the person before you have them start answering the phone, right? Now, what does that mean? Very often we forget to tell the receptionist what the real purpose of the receptionist job is. Like, why are you here? And what is your main function in reception, right? And obviously reception has multiple functions: to greet the patient when they come in, create a friendly environment, right? Make sure the patients are taken care of, make sure any communication into the office is routed properly and quickly, right? So reception has various functions, right? And one of the functions it has is to bring the patient in, right? And I guess that is the main function of the receptionist, is to bring people in. It is not to answer their questions or to become their doctor or to become the treatment coordinator or the insurance coordinator and explain their benefits to them. Receptionist's job is to bring the person into the practice. Any questions or concern the patient has at that point are going to be answered in the practice by the proper person, the person who's supposed to answer that, either the doctor or the insurance coordinator or things like that, right?
Right. So it almost, like, if you don't mind me interjecting for a second, it sort of precedes training.
Right.
Sort of like orienting them, because, one of the things that Jeff mentioned when he was here was that a lot of the receptionists were very pleasant.
Yeah.
They're
friendly.
pleasant. They just didn't schedule them.
Right.
So, and it was funny because, and I remember talking to Jeff about this before.
Yeah.
The receptionist, the doctor would listen. The doctors that did listen to these mystery calls were, oh, she was very pleasant.
And, most people are pleasant.
Sure. But that doesn't necessarily get the person in.
Correct. They forget, or they haven't been trained or told that their primary function is to schedule the patient.
Right.
Bring them in, whether that's an existing patient or a new patient. Right. So if somebody's calling in asking, do you take my insurance? Or how much do you charge for a crown? Or whatever their question or concern, how much do you charge for cleaning? Whatever their concern may be, right? Whatever answer the receptionist is trained, or however the receptionist is trained to answer that question, is always aligned or directed towards bringing that patient in, not answering the person's question and ending it there.
Right. Now, can I just, not to put you on the spot, right?
Yeah.
Just because I want to give the folks at home something, because one of the things, and this has just been rolling around in my mind.
Yes.
So one of the things Jeff brought up, our mystery calls that we did here from MGE were all shopper calls.
Okay.
And then they changed them to where they were like in pain or this or that or whatever, right?
Sure.
And they got scheduled. One of them scheduled for 2 months from then. But anyway, keeps getting worse the more I talk to Jeff about it. But one of the issues, he noticed that 20% of the receptionists were rude or short.
Yes.
And it was always, he couldn't tell much from hello, but it was always when he asked how much a crown was.
Yes.
Then they became instantly, not nice.
Right.
So, and I know a lot of folks out there, when they think of shoppers, I've seen this. There's like this, shoppers are bad.
Like an attitude about shoppers.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's like, how many people shop for things? If I go looking for a car, I would shop that car.
Right.
Right. If I go, can get bread, somewhere and get the exact same loaf of bread somewhere else, I would probably go with the cheaper one if it's the exact same product. So you have to understand that shoppers are not necessarily bad in their mind. They may not necessarily realize that there's a difference in the type of crown, the materials that are used, the skill of the doctor, the type of office that they're in, that those factors all influence the price, right? Or can influence the price.
Sure.
So, no, there's nothing wrong with shoppers. Some people do it, some people don't. And it doesn't really matter. They're still human beings and they need dentistry.
Right.
Right. So somebody being a shopper doesn't indicate. But it's interesting you say that. Because when you said that to me, the first thought I had is when people get antagonistic, okay, so it could be that they're just a rude individual, in which case it's like, why is nobody monitoring this receptionist, right?
Right.
That one's obvious. But sometimes people get antagonistic when they feel put on the spot, like they don't quite know how to answer.
Okay, so how much is a crown? And they don't know what to say, so they feel irritated because they don't know what to say.
Well, yeah, they know they shouldn't answer the question. right? But they also don't necessarily know how to handle that patient to still schedule.
Sure.
Right. So when you put somebody on the spot, sometimes they can become irritated or antagonistic. So sometimes it's a training thing with the receptionist that they can't smoothly handle that. If a receptionist has an attitude towards shoppers, they just need to be, that attitude needs to be changed. There's nothing wrong with somebody shopping.
Right. Do you want to do like a little bit of a demo for folks so they
Sure.
could see?
If you want to.
I think that'd be kind of cool.
If you
let me
want
ask
to.
our podcast production crew. We're supposed to give them practice success in 30 minutes or less. I think we've killed the 30 minutes thing here. Sorry,
we?
folks. It's going to be like 42 minutes or whatever it ends up. Okay. So we're going to do a demo call here.
Sure.
I'm a shopper.
Yeah.
You're the receptionist. So I call.
Yeah.
You answer the phone.
Hello, ABC Dental. Can I help you?
Okay, fine.
Okay, that wasn't very friendly.
That was
was
a
it?
terrible. Like, wow.
Well, you put me on the spot. I'm trying to think of a name.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let's try it again. Ring, ring.
Hi, ABC Dental. Can I help you?
Yeah. I was calling to find out how much you charge for a crown.
Yes. Okay, for you?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd be happy to answer that question for you, but I need to get a little bit more information because there's different kinds of crowns.
Okay.
Okay. Now, before I get into that, can I get your name
It's Jeff, and you. Yeah.
and your last name? And I get that. And I would
Sure.
get your phone number. I
Sure.
would get all the basic information
Cool.
from you, right?
Okay. Good.
Say, okay. So the first question I have for you, right?
Yeah.
What makes you think you need a crown?
Oh. I saw a dentist, and I had some problems in the on the left side of my mouth,
Yeah.
and the doc told me I needed. Actually, told me I needed 4 crowns.
Oh, wow. Okay. All on the left side of your mouth?
Yeah.
Do you know why you need 4 crowns?
I don't know. That's what he said.
Are there crowns there right now?
No, I've had fillings on a couple of those teeth, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I got them a long time ago.
Yeah.
But yeah.
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 Okay. This is what I can tell you, Jeff. There's a big range in crowns depending on the type of crown that you need, right? If you don't have crowns on these teeth right now, the first thing I would like to do is have the doctor take a look at them, right, to determine whether he would even crown these teeth or not.
Oh.
Right. And then from there, what we would do, because dentistry is a little bit subjective.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would like to get our doctor's take on, do you need a crown or not on these teeth? And if you do need crowns, how many do you actually need? Right.
I see.
And then at the same time, if you do need crowns, really have the doctor explain to you why you need them
Okay.
and how much we charge for them.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
But again, depending on the kind of crown he's going to put on and things like that.
Okay.
Do you have dental insurance or not?
No.
You don't. Okay. Well, we actually have a new patient special right now where you can come in for a complimentary second opinion. So it wouldn't cost you anything for you to come in and have the doctor take a look.
Oh,
Why
wow.
don't I just schedule you to come in? He can have a look and you can get a real answer to your question.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. When would you like to come
All
in?
right. And then you schedule me.
And then I schedule you.
And now, what's interesting, and I brought that up because you pointing out this issue to me. We've seen it play out time and again. Is
Yeah.
when someone is shopping normally.
Yeah.
If I just went to a dentist and that doctor told me I needed 1 crown,
Yeah.
chances are I'm not shopping.
No, not for 1, but usually for 3 or 4 you
Right.
are.
Yeah.
Like usually when somebody's shopping, there's more to the story.
That's why I find it so silly when someone adopts this weird viewpoint about a shopper. First off, everybody shops.
Yes.
And then they're adopting a weird viewpoint about a shopper, like, ew, it's a shopper. But
Nothing
you're
wrong
throwing
with
away
probably-
potentially a great new patient.
Absolutely. And obviously, this patient didn't fully get their questions answered that they're now calling you. So why don't you help this person?
Right.
Right. What I find most important when you're talking to a potential new patient is that you talk to the potential new patient.
Right.
Right. Really talk to them. And you can't necessarily always have a script for this, but what you can do is you can teach yourself to communicate or put somebody in reception that has already basic good communication skills, is genuinely interested in people, and has some training or some drilling on the basic questions that they're going to be asked and knows how to answer those properly.
Right.
Right.
And I sort of put you on the spot like that.
No,
I
it's
thought you did
okay.
awesome.
Thank
but,
you.
And I didn't want to throw you off track.
No, you're
But I just
okay.
thought, inevitably it's probably what people want to hear. I could be completely wrong, but I'm
We're
sure.
gonna find out.
Yeah, we're going to find out. Like they click the podcast off. Oh, I'm doing it. Oh, I wanna hear this. Anyway.
Right. Right.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
Okay, good.
You're good. So I guess like I also gave you the second point, and
Yeah.
that is you really have to make sure not only that your receptionist knows that their primary function is to bring the patient in and get the patient looked at by the correct person in the practice. Like, you're not going to diagnose whether this person needs 4 crowns or
Right.
what kind of crowns they need or
Right.
anything like that. And you need to let the patient know that. Like, that, I really can't do that.
Right. The receptionist isn't going to, no, I get it.
No, we're not going to do that. Second of all, you should know what your new patient offers are. Like, do you offer complimentary second consultations? Do you have a new patient special for cleanings, things like that for people who don't have insurance or maybe whose insurances you don't participate with? So the receptionist needs to know these things, and they need to know what questions they're going to be asked, and they need to be able to competently handle those questions while at the same time always orienting the patient towards come on in, come on in, come on in. And that's what you want.
Excuse me. Yeah.
Right.
Interesting. Now, one thing I noticed, and someone's going to definitely try to bust us on this one, so I should bring it up. But
Bust
do you know,
us or you?
us,
Oh,
not
I
just
see.
me.
Okay.
But now you'll notice I didn't push for the price. I was pretty easy when I scheduled. But let's say in that scenario that we just played out, if I then said, but how much does a crown cost? What would you have told me?
Could be anywhere between $700, right? Let's say a stainless steel crown or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? All the way up to $1,500.
All right, so it'd be like your base crown. Let's say you could be $800 or $1,000, whatever your base crown is, up to a crown build up and whatever.
Exactly.
Okay.
So there's a very wide range, right? But the one thing that I can tell you, and what I always would push again when I have somebody really like, okay, but how much does it cost? I would say, listen, you have nothing to lose.
Right.
Your consultation is complimentary.
Right. And they don't even know if they need a crown yet.
We
till they
don't
get in
even
there.
know if you need a crown. But the
Right.
one thing that I can tell you is we have a great doctor here, right? And he is going to take great care of you.
Okay.
Right. And ultimately, you do want those teeth handled because you're calling people.
Right.
So why don't you just come on in? And it's really the best way that we can answer your question.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah?
Love it. I figured I'd bring it up because
Come on in. Come on in.
I didn't
come on
push
in.
the issue for
Right.
the price, but you would just give them a range, basically.
Let's give them a big
cool,
range.
Cool. All right. Sorry. I
Yeah.
know you can tell we talk a lot.
Yes.
Anyway. All right. Good. So you went through your first 2 points. I like that.
Right. Okay. So the point being, you really need to make sure that the receptionist not only knows what they're going to be asked, but has drilled this. Now, when I say drill,
Explain drill.
yeah, exactly. We're talking about role playing.
Okay.
Right. So I'm the receptionist and somebody else is the patient. And they are just like you and I just did.
Yeah.
You're doing this with the receptionist over and over, all these different scenarios until they can easily handle each one.
Right.
Of these scenarios. And even when you throw in, you start off easy and then you make them more difficult.
Right.
And then, you might start off with not really pushing for the price, but then really pushing for the price. And then, well, what if it's more expensive? Or the other guy told me it was going to be this expensive, this how much you're going to charge? Like, how would you answer that?
So you do lots of different scenarios.
Until the receptionist can find their own words, right? And then from there, as I said, you can start with the basic script.
Right.
Right. But ultimately, it's going to sound best in a person's own way of expressing themselves. And that's really what I want you to do.
Makes total
Right.
sense. Okay, good. Cool.
So that's point number 2, like really drill it.
Sure.
Right. Obviously, you as an executive have, the practice owner as the doctor have an executive responsibility to oversee this person, right? So whether you or an office manager doesn't really matter, but somebody has to listen to these calls.
Yeah, that's an issue, and this came up a little bit when I was talking to Jeff. And, I've told you this when I'm lecturing here, especially with newer clients. I'll ask, how many has the software to record calls? I think everybody has this stuff now.
These days, most people have it.
Yeah, but when I ask how many people listen to them, 1 or 2 hands will go up. And then how often do you listen? Like, never,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very important. And it's interesting because I've listened to lots of people phone calls now, right? Just randomly.
Sure.
And it goes down from being downright rude sometimes, and the doctor's completely unaware,
Right.
to, you obviously have your people that are dynamite, that are awesome. But you have most in between. The receptionist is doing his or her best to handle the patient, right? And are friendly and kind.
Sure.
And they just really, that's when you see they need correction. They haven't been trained. They don't know how to answer this. And it becomes painfully obvious as you listen to these phone calls. So just because you've drilled with your receptionist and you've trained them doesn't mean that they're now perfect from here on forward, that are never going to run into anything that they don't need to review or maybe learn that we didn't go over.
Or they could be doing something right and then start messing it up and need to be corrected on that.
Yeah. So, anybody needs supervision.
Sure.
In a job.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense.
So make sure that you listen to the phone calls. The other thing is that if conversion is what you're tracking, you want to make sure that one person is responsible for those phone calls, because it really becomes a mess when you have multiple people doing this.
Now, this is important.
Yeah.
This is extremely important.
Yes.
And you're mentioning it very offhand, which
Well,
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying in a very negative way, but I want to just stress the importance of this, if I can. If you don't mind, I mean to interrupt.
No.
But making sure one person is responsible for the calls. What do you mean by that? Because this is a big deal.
Well, you want one person that you train that you can hold accountable for the conversion statistic. That is your expert. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have backup people trained. But ultimately, when we're talking about new patient conversion, that is a statistic. Right? It's 24%, 50%, 75%, whatever it may be.
Right.
It's a statistic, right? And you want to make sure that you as an executive know who that statistic belongs to, so that you can hold that person accountable for the conversion in your office. So that means not only that they are going to be doing a good job because they know they are responsible for that statistic and they take pride and ownership and accountability for that statistic. You as an executive know who to correct if that statistic is not what it should be, right? And the staff member can also, in this case, the receptionist, can also take some responsibility in getting better at what they're doing when they see it starting to slip.
Right.
It may not have to turn into a disaster before they come to you and go, listen, it wasn't as good last week or this last month. I'm not sure what I'm doing different. Can I sit down with you and can we drill a little? That's really what you want to see in a staff member. You want to see them take ownership and responsibility for their area of the organization that you are paying them to handle.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah?
That makes sense.
Good.
Okay, cool.
All right. So that's another thing. And then I just want to wrap it up with don't compromise, right? And if you have a receptionist that's obviously not going to make it.
Yeah.
Because despite correction and drilling, they're either not getting it, keep messing up continuously, the same mistakes. They're not learning from their mistakes. They are unfriendly. They're rude. They're hanging up on people. They, that is probably not a good fit.
Right.
For your office.
And we've seen this numerous times where someone will have somebody that they tell you, well, I got to replace that person, but they're keeping them anyway.
Right. How much money is that costing you? Right. Or my favorite is when you have a receptionist, when I listen to a call, and this happens sometimes where I listen to a client's staff handle a phone call and it's rude. It's just rude.
Right.
And I point this out to the owner of the practice, like, hey, doctor, your receptionist is handling your patients that way. And the doctor's response to me is, yeah, I know, I really should be giving them more training. I'm like, okay, you don't have to train somebody to be friendly.
Right.
That is either an attribute they have or not. That's something they instinctively should know if they're going to be a receptionist. If I have to tell a receptionist, don't be rude, or any staff member to a patient for that matter, that person is probably in the wrong industry. They should not be in the service industry. And do not ever forget that you are in the service industry. You are servicing patients.
Right. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, Sabri,
yes,
this was awesome.
Great.
Guys, you've got some great tips to start working on. Obviously, our whole object here is give you things to immediately start implementing. So we went over those points.
Yeah.
These are things you can use immediately in your office. Thank you so much for joining us today, Sabri.
You're very
awesome.
welcome.
And, we'll wrap it up with this. I started this podcast by going over that, Viva had done this whole study where the conversion rate was 23%. It was actually a little bit less than that. And if you want to look at the actual impact in just straight dollars and cents, if you're the average dental practice and you're seeing 23 new patients a month, that technically means you're probably getting 100 calls a month for the average office. If you were to just do a little bit of work on this, do some of the things Sabri was just talking about there, do some training on your receptionist, and I'll give you a couple of the ideas we have and some solutions we have here at MGE as well. If you were to just do it, let's say you got it up to 50%, which is still not setting the world on fire. That's an additional 27 new patients a month. Now, I don't know if you know this or not. The average, and by average, I'm not talking about somebody lighting the world on fire, but average dental practice, the value of a new patient to a dental practice average is $1,200 in the first year. If you were to just get up to 50%, that's an additional 27 new patients, an average of $1,200 a year. That's an additional $32,000 a month in collections, just by handling the phones correctly. So it's obviously, this is something worth investing some time in. It's a big problem. It's a much bigger problem, I think, than people have been suspecting. There's a couple things I'd recommend. Obviously, there's the MGE New Patient Workshop, which I talked about earlier. I would definitely try that mystery call. You can check it in the description. We have the URL for you to click. Now, also, we do have some receptionist training on our online platform, DDS Success. You can check that out as well, ddssuccess.com. We have a receptionist training course as well as a scheduler training course on there. But this is something you definitely want to throw the kitchen sink at. I mean, not literally, you're not throwing a kitchen sink at anybody, but this is something you want to definitely take care of, because even a slight improvement in this area can mean a lot for your practice. Guys, I hope that helped, and we'll see you at the next podcast.